Unless you've been living under a rock, you got to be well aware that New York Jet fans have been salivating at the idea of adding Davante Adams to this roster with Aaron Rodgers and our hopes of going to a Super Bowl. And up until now, it has not worked, but it seems like there may be something on the horizon. Could Davante Adams be on the move? Jets, Jets, Jets! All right, gang, I'm really excited to get into this. Davante Adams news, new video clips coming out, adding a little bit of gasoline to the fire that was the Jets-Davante Adams connection prior to this. Now the Raiders get throttled by the Carolina Panthers, and there's a whole bunch more going on. So I'm really excited about this. As a Jet fan, look, we want the Raiders to lose. You want as many losses as possible so they feel like they have to trade Davante Adams at the trade deadline. It's what I've been saying is going to happen for the last year now. I still think it's going to happen. So I want to give you guys my thoughts as far as the video clips, the salary, what I think it would cost in a trade, and how this offense could look with Davante Adams at the helm. So without further ado, let's hop into Antonio Pierce's. So I actually really like Antonio Pierce. I think as a defensive-minded head coach, he just has a little bit extra grit that goes along with him. And he's a little bit of cachet because he was a former player not all that long ago. And what he's saying here is essentially, look, we were getting our asses handed to us by the Carolina Panthers, and it seems like some players on this team made some business decisions. If you're new to that term, business decision just means you're not going to put your body fully on the line because you are making a business decision to continue to play in future games and not risk your bodily injury. We've said that a whole lot about players on losing teams in the past, and could maybe Davante Adams be one of these players? This was what he looked like just prior to halftime, or right at halftime. A very happy Davante Adams, although to be fair, I don't think many Raiders players were happy down 14 points to the Carolina Panthers. Now, this looks very similar to the wide receiver Netflix show that came out that leaked a little bit, I shouldn't say leaked, but showed a little bit of audio about Davante Adams on the sideline last year.
I gotta get the fuck out of here before I lose my fucking life. I ain't never been hit this many fucking times in my career. Every game I get fucked up.
So I gotta get the F out of here before I wind up getting hurt. I've never been hit like this in my life. All things that sort of point to this dude does not want to be on a team that is not currently contending for a Super Bowl. So that was, more than enough, I think, for fans to start speculating and having the head spin. And then we got to hear a little bit from Davante after the game as well.
Execution. We gotta find a way to get going and keep it going. And I feel like once we get a rhythm going in pass game, whatever it is, that's when things generally look good. But if we just keep trying to do things that don't work, then it's going to make it, we're just going to kill time and kill opportunities to be great on the field.
So I want to read back that last sentence that he says, if we just keep trying to do things that don't work, we're just going to kill time and opportunities to be great. This feels very similar to when the Raiders had Randy Moss a bunch of years ago, and he kind of not that he gave up, but it just felt like you were wasting a prime receiver in an area that just was not, look, the Raiders are not winning. They're not going to win this year. They're not going to be a top-end team. I don't think with the Chiefs in that division, not to mention the Broncos are playing a little bit better, and then you got obviously the Chargers that are having a little bit of success right now too. Davante just feels like he's probably stuck at this point. And unless we change something, we're just going to keep doing the same thing. Maybe if I'm reading all the tea leaves, this is definitely going to happen. Look, I definitely think Davante Adams is going to get traded. So let's talk about this a little bit. Is Davante Adams actually going to get moved? Well, his contract coming up, he's got 1 year, $15 million if traded at the beginning of this football season. And with each game that passes, 1/17 of that $15 million salary, or 18 million, was it 17? I think it was $17.5 million salary, gets sliced off. So about $1 million per game. The trade deadline is November 5th, which is, I think, is that week 9? I think it's week 9. I feel like that's week 9. So about half his contract. He'll have about 1 year, $8 to $9 million left on this season. And then he has 2 years in the next 2 seasons that would be no guaranteed money left and would be at about $35 million. If he stays on the Raiders, it's $44 million because of the signing bonus he saved. So the Raiders are in this weird situation of, do we hold on to Davante Adams the next 2 years at $44 million a year? Do we think this guy is going to want to restructure and stay here long-term after what we just put him through this year and last year? I think that's probably not likely. So their decision might have to come to, it's the trade deadline. Do we want to get something for Davante now since we're not going to be in a winning situation this year to utilize him? Or do we want to cut him after the season, assuming he's not going to want to renegotiate that $44 million cap hit that he has. So I guess one thing to look at first, the Raiders cap space next year is a lot. They have so much cap space. And if they wind up making a move with Davante Adams, they wind up having like $150 million in cap space next year. It's absolutely bonkers. So they could, in theory, keep him. But it would still be a $10 million a year overpay. And I don't know if I necessarily see the Raiders doing that when they can extract some value this year, particularly at the trade deadline, that could help them in the offseason. And then you wind up moving a player. I think that there is some degree of goodness. That's a weird way to say that. There's some degree of benefit from moving a player that's clearly held there kind of against their will. Joe Douglas has done it with a few different players, put them in some good situations, whether it be, I think they released Le'Veon Bell. They wound up trading, was it McClendon? Or no, it was Snacks? Whatever it was. We wound up trading like 3 or 4 players that would wind up going into better situations. And I think that's something that players that are on your team that are not being traded sort of take a look at and say like, okay, this guy's at least trying to do right by the players. So that's definitely, it seems like it could happen. So from a money standpoint, I do think that would work. And not to mention the Jets have about $20-ish million in salary cap space. Now, maybe that changed a little bit with Michael Carter. Maybe we're sitting somewhere around 15. I don't have the number right offhand on me right now. But what's nice is if you trade him at the deadline, the Jets are taking on about an $8 million salary cap hit. If Haason Reddick were to show up, then it makes it a little bit more difficult. But Haason Reddick is already down $8.3 million this year. I can tell you right now, he wasn't going to play on 1 year. $15 million, he's not going to play on 1 year less than $8 million at this point. So that means he's either going to have to get a really big time payday, which I don't see Joe Douglas doing, or he's going to wind up having to get traded. So the Jets needing to really move Haason Reddick and the Raiders potentially needing to get rid of Davante. Do they want just a pick from maybe another team? Do they want a player maybe in return? There's going to be a few teams that I'm sure are going to be in on Davante Adams. They're going to have to decide, do they want to have him for a 1-year rental? Does he want to be there for a 1-year rental? He does have some degree of leverage in the fact that he could sign a new contract with his new team, thus bringing down his salary cap hit for this year, and then making it more financially feasible for those teams. It's like Buffalo, a team that might need a number 1 stud wide receiver, could make this move. They'd have to restructure a bunch of contracts, but they don't have a lot of cap space in the future either. So this is really a one and done year for them. But look, Davante midseason going to the team that he already had the offensive coordinator for. He's got his best buddy here in Aaron Rodgers. Not to mention this offense would be friggin' electric. I think there's a potential for the Jets to move Haason Reddick over to Las Vegas, even though they don't necessarily need a stud edge rusher. They might opt for having a stud edge rusher to go opposite Max Crosby while also getting an additional premium pick. Like, let's say the Bills are offering you a back end of the first round pick and the Jets are offering you a second plus Haason Reddick. Maybe there's maybe they want the second plus the stud player. I don't know. I don't know exactly how this trade is going to work out. I think a conditional pick that could become a first round pick. Look, if the Jets wind up making the playoffs, I don't really care about pick 22 and higher if that's what it winds up being. So I think there could be a relatively low threshold on where the Jets may want to give up in a pick, but give themselves protection in the fact, or in the case that like they don't make the playoffs, then you don't lose a first round pick, that sort of thing. The same thing they did with the Aaron Rodgers trade. I think that could happen. I do think that Davante Adams could want to restructure his contract to align with the 2-year window of Aaron Rodgers. I could also see it being beneficial for both sides, both the Jets and Davante Adams, to let this be a 1-year rental. Try to get that Super Bowl ring. Let Davante Adams cash in wherever he wants to cash in. The Jets wind up getting a comp pick for him back. Almost the same thought process as Haason Reddick anyway, only Davante Adams is actually playing on his current contract where Haason Reddick was not. So lots of things that go into this. I think it makes a ton of sense. As far as the offensive side of the ball goes, how does this look? Because the Jets offense has been looking pretty good so far. I believe they're top 5 in efficiency, if I'm not mistaken right now. You would have more than likely Mike Williams on the outside. You would have Davante Adams on the outside, and you'd probably stick Garrett Wilson in the slot, which makes him insanely lethal in getting free releases and literally having any direction he can go. When you're on the outside, you kind of have a relatively limited route tree because you're not necessarily breaking to the outside quite so much. But this would be absolutely awesome, and it's a lot of firepower. The nice thing is, I think the Jets can wait until the trade deadline. So you get an opportunity to see what Mike Williams looks like when he's healthy. You get an opportunity to see how Lazard rebounds. Heck, did anyone see him having 3 touchdowns in 3 weeks? No, I know I definitely did not. Not to mention, there's just a lot that has to happen. Maybe the Raiders turn it around and Gardner Minshew winds up leading some crazy, resurgence to these Raiders, and it's totally not a thing that any of us saw coming. Well, look, the Raiders' schedule does not get any easier. Their next bunch of games, the Browns, I should have moved this over. The Browns, the Broncos, the Steelers, the Rams, the Chiefs, and the Bengals. So all teams that are pretty tough. I don't know how many games you see the Raiders winning in there. Maybe the Broncos game, but after today, them beating the Buccaneers, I could totally see them beating the Raiders. So they might lose every single one of these games going down the line and wind up being with, one win heading into the trade deadline. So I really think there's going to be an opportunity for the New York Jets. I do think they should get aggressive for this. I think if you really want to be serious about winning a Super Bowl this year, just load it up with all the possible talent you can. You can't take it with you. Look, the salary cap, the little bit will roll over, but we're going all in for these next 2 years. So I don't care if you got to add void years to whoever to extend them, push it off into 2026. I do not care. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below. Is Davante Adams going to be a New York Jet? Do you want Davante Adams to be a New York Jet? How do you think it all plays out? What does he wind up getting traded for? Let me know in the comment section down below. And as always, go Jets. Jets!